safety meeting coming to order at 6:04. And we have one item on the agenda tonight, which is a follow-up discussion of decriminalization of marijuana. And there were several documents in our packet that we had requested after the last meeting. As you will recall, at our last meeting we covered kind of the basic decision-making points that are in front of us when considering this item. And as follow-up, the committee requested an updated report from the Public Policy Forum that was available, the Eau Claire ordinance, and the Milwaukee ordinance. So that is what is in our packets for this evening. And so Chief Nimmer or Village Manager, I guess I'll just ask from the committee what the thoughts were in response to the materials that were requested. Trustee Meyer, I believe you were not present at the last meeting, is that correct?
Sure. I was sure.
Oh, you were in committee? All right, I apologize. So, did anybody have any responses or questions about the materials that were provided to us?
No.
And did they provide the context that you were hoping for? Yes?
Yeah. I mean, I think also there were a couple other people at that meeting that are not here right now, so.
That is true.
But no, I do appreciate the additional materials.
I know, and there is a legal opinion from Attorney Bayer included in our materials, which is very helpful because right now, as you know, as you'll recall, marijuana is essentially decriminalized because the DA guidelines don't require us to refer those types of arrests to, well, within that parameter. And so there was a question of whether we could put the DA county, the district attorney guidelines within our ordinance if we were to change the ordinance, and the legal opinion is no, because if then the guidelines change, we would be out of sync with that, with that guideline, and county is above local jurisdiction, so that would be null and void. So to change our ordinance to that nature, to set that potential situation up as misleading, we try to avoid that. So that eliminates that decision-making point. That is not considering that. So our next is to consider. I apologize. I'm trying to pull back. Yes.
And I did not participate in the last community meeting, but in just kind of reviewing the materials, it appears to me that the last item for any resolution or directions would be receiving would be whether or not there would be consideration for modifying the fine amount.
Right.
That's
kind of the first.
Oh, maybe that was your first point in the last meeting, but that seemed to be the last item that, at least on my checklist of things, whether or not to do something that's
Right, so the fine amount is kind of related to a fee schedule, and that is in and of itself a decision. And then whether to change the ordinance to, right now the ordinance doesn't distinguish between possession and use, right? Use and possession?
Correct. Correct.
And so the committee needs to decide whether they feel that the intent is the same with, that the public would. We went back to the referendum language that was on the last ballot, and it is it's a pretty narrow, what we can extract from that support for that advisory referendum doesn't give us all the direction we would need to the decisions that we have the option to make in terms of the ordinance. Fee schedule, we can take that independently, and so then the question would become, what's going on around us. So $50 is the fee in Milwaukee, it seemed like. And I confess that when I read the ordinances, it looks like there's two kinds of forfeiture, and there's one that's 50 and then there's one that's much higher. And I couldn't tell And then in the Eau Claire one, it looked like the first forfeiture was $1, but then there was another one right below it that was quite a bit higher. So I couldn't exactly follow that, but I think what the original proposal to the committee to consider was somewhere between $1 and $50 for the fine in Shorewood, minus the applicable fee.
In the Milwaukee one, yeah, I was just looking at that. This $0 to $50 is possession. $250 to $500 is smoking in
So
public.
that, it does differentiate
Yeah, it
between use.
differentiates the
So
two
that's-
activities.
Okay, and so that means that, right, so that means that the Eau Claire one differentiates between possession and use as well. And so if, right now, if we just change the fee, it would apply both to use and possession, because that's how our ordinance is written. It's never
I
been
see.
differentiated. And so the question before the committee at this point is, do you really think the public supports that low of a fee for both use and possession? Or does the public feel very differently about that? And possession is one thing, but public use is not something that we want to encourage at this point. Or that you do want to have a deterrent by having a higher. So then that would listen to the ordinance change. Am I presenting that correctly? And some of the other issues that came up around that is basically going back to the advisory referendum support is it really says, it really doesn't indicate this support for public use. It's more related to possession or private use, recreational use, kind of like in the home. But what we're concerned here, we have to consider that it could be interpreted to be public use.
Okay, well, with that being said, when we originally discussed this, when I brought this to the board, it was solely based on possession.
Okay, that was the intent.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
I am curious by, the opportunities to explore other areas, but at this time, what I brought forward was what they've done in Eau Claire, in Milwaukee, in Madison. Madison's a little different. I think they don't penalize the private use. I'm not a lawyer, but so
And I think that's not in our packet.
So I guess the decisions we need to make are fine. And if we do the fine, we have to change the ordinance. So are we changing the ordinance?
Because that's what, just to clarify, that is
Yes.
what you proposed is just to reduce the fine
For
for,
the minimal
for-
amount allowable under law.
for possession only. And that given that our current ordinance does not differentiate, then your recommendation would be to lower the fine for possession and change the ordinance to distinguish between possession and use, public use, correct? Okay. So given that, trustee Mark.
How's the minor, I mean, currently, is this opening, do we need to start addressing age differential or how this thing is structured?
Right, so that would be the other thing, is that our ordinance does not distinguish between age. So if we were not to change that, then,
Can I interrupt for a second? So since Eau Claire just went through this process and we don't have the ordinance, maybe we should use that as the standard and then talk about that and what we're not comfortable with.
okay.
You know what I'm saying? Because we already have a document that's been pretty well analyzed by, and passed the board, out in Eau Claire, so.
What?
I'm sorry, I don't mean to
No,
break the process.
I appreciate that, just, yeah, it's flipping the process.
Because we're going from what's called an antiquated situation, like trying to cobble together how would we change something completely instead of maybe we look at something completely new.
I did not see in the Eau Claire ordinance, that's where I kind of, ordinance language is not my first language,
It's not
right?
either.
So in the Eau Claire language, in the Eau Claire ordinance, I don't know how they handle age. Do you recall?
I don't think they do, but I'm not sure. I don't have it in front of me, but I don't think they differentiate the age. So that would be a question if you wanted to do that or not.
I would think that our community would want age.
So then I think what I'm going to do is we have a very limited amount of time here. I'm figuring, what are the things that we're using that we're comfortable with, and what are the areas that we need to look at? But maybe Mike, maybe I should do what you always do, put together the comparison chart of the variety of, have you done that already?
No.
Okay. With the different fee schedules, with the differences in those ordinances, and I can speak with my friends up in Eau Claire and in Milwaukee and Madison. You know, the Madison ordinance was revised so long ago that, and that one is probably far more progressive than many would be able to stomach. I think it's fine. So would that be helpful? Do you want me to do some homework and put together that information?
That would be fabulous.
Since we don't have staff to do it.
Did we, yeah, Chief Nimmer, in the original memo that you gave us, did you give us that information about the different municipalities and their fee schedules? That wasn't part of our, I just don't want to, if we don't have to replicate materials that are already available, then.
There's some in there. Like West Dallas is in there, and Eau Claire, and Madison, maybe Milwaukee, maybe.
Yeah, I feel like I don't
Yeah, there
see.
was some, yeah.
So,
In the original memo.
right, which we can put on in our,
January 24th, third page.
So here, well, yeah, so West Dallas lowered theirs from $1,300 to $690.
For first offense.
Yeah.
Wow.
Milwaukee was up to 50. Round Deer, 313. River Hills, 303. Box Point, 691. Oshkosh, 200. Stevens Point, 100. Madison is up to 100. I don't know the difference there as far as the use versus possession.
Sure.
And then Green Bay went from 1,000 to 500.
So in effect, some of these places kept their original amount, the ones that you did mention that was a decrease.
Correct.
And the Shorewood is right here.
right now.
Yes, so right now it's
Which cost?
correct. 376 total. 250 is the deposit amount.
So currently in the state of Wisconsin, Eau Claire, $1, Madison up to 100, but we're unsure whether or not that's possession versus use. Milwaukee, 50,
Correct.
up to 50. And this includes the Milwaukee one, doesn't include the administrative fees in the state.
Correct.
Processing $58 per
Correct.
Okay.
So the $50 forfeiture is 124 total when you add all the fees.
And so it basically goes from south of us is $50 to the north of us is 300 and up. 300?
Yes. River Hills, 303, Box Point, 691. I think Whitefish Bay, don't quote me though, I think it's around 303, number 2.
And Glendale.
Glendale is, I don't have Glendale in here.
But then other municipalities have cut their fines in half for first-time charges for possession of 25 grams or less from over $1,000 to 500.
Correct, there's some that have done that, yes.
Well, there's an opportunity to be
So we don't
leaders yet again.
distinguish, so there's the distinguishing between quantity and use and possession. Both, Milwaukee has an age difference too. The forfeiture is much higher or on usage. You know, Claire is $1 if you're over 18. It's like, it's still minimal. Between 12 and $50.
For Eau Claire?
So there's an age difference.
So I think the things to consider moving forward would be possession versus use. What you want defined amounts to be for each. And then the third would be a caveat if you want to carve out an age, whether it be 18 or 21 or any other number. But that would be the third thing. From what I'm hearing from you,
Yeah.
guys.
And it seems like what I'm hearing from the committee is that there's agreement that if the fees change, then we need to distinguish between public use and possession, right? Because the original proposal only related to reducing the fee related to possession. The intent for.
Correct.
For
That's,
exactly. So we just want to clarify that if there is a fee change, there would definitely be an ordinance change on that level. It seems like we are feeling like an age carve-out would be appropriate, but that isn't something that our community would want us to not look at, so that there would be a different fine for
My
minors and 18 and older, correct? So we just have to decide the fee amount, and I don't know what process is going through that.
Well, I'm gonna stick with my dollar. Or if you guys, I'll compromise, 420 if you want to do that.
so
Did you say 20 or 20? Oh, 4. I have a full, my hearing.
So I think if you choose to do the ordinance, then the village attorney would need to be the one who wrote that for you, and that to be brought back to the committee, if that's so you so choose.
Sorry, I would ask you guys to review the Eau Claire ordinance, since that's the one that I'm most familiar with, and that I have been discussing with members of that organization, and that's, I mean, and it's like using that as kind of the template.
Well, they don't carve out an age in that one.
Okay, well, that
So,
is fair.
yeah, that would be, but between it does carve out, I mean, it does distinguish between use and possession. It does have the dollar, which you're looking for. I'm not sure that I'm
We
finding
can't
a
get rid
dollar.
of, we can't get, we have to have a minimum.
Yes,
That's why I'm saying, I mean, that's,
yes. I don't know that I'm at the dollar minimum at this point. I don't know what it would take to get me there or what process, so I'm just reading through. It was enough to get to the, the ordinance part. And I guess, you know, I'm going back to does this committee have full charge to recommend ordinance, or do we go back to full board and say this is our recommendation and
I think we should bring them something concrete.
Yeah, I think we've got to go through what it might look like.
okay.
Yeah, it's, yeah, instead of conceptually, we have something.
So we've ruled out just changing the fee schedule.
Correct.
We're not just gonna do that. So we know that. So I think we're going the ordinance route. So I think we gotta call in the attorney the next time. And we need to somehow have a discussion about age. The separation between use and possession is clear. That's what we want changed in the ordinance. Probably want an age carve out, and then we have to come up with fee for possession versus use and age.
Some of these other numbers distinguish between first offense, second offense.
Right. We would,
Or how, just even what that looks like.
once you change the fee and how
The
that,
fee
like what's the
change.
domino effect? Was your proposal that there would be no second and third offense?
Well, I mean, I would be fine with getting rid of those as well.
Well, I think at this point, we're out of time and, oh, look at the time. No, we're out of time and we know that we have to go an
Okay,
ordinance
so
process,
I will bring back the Eau Claire ordinance with some suggestions for next time, as far as, based on the discussion that we have here, for you guys to look at, or but just to give you a better understanding of what I'm proposing or what I'm comfortable with. And I'm just 1 of 7. So,
Right, right. So I think, yeah, and I would say in the meantime that we need to keep reviewing all the materials that we have on hand, because now that we've decided to explore changing the ordinance, these policy documents that are more comprehensive in terms of impact and things like that, I think become more relevant, you know,
Exactly.
even more so. So I think we'd like to keep all these materials kind of active in our packet, whether it's through hyperlink or
just yeah, please continue to include the same reference materials.
Right.
Yeah.
And then one more follow-up question, so are you looking at the term between now and your next meeting to review the Eau Claire ordinance?
Well, yeah, that's a good question.
I
So
don't know what
maybe,
that process is.
I mean, we can communicate to Attorney Bear what we've discussed this evening, of course,
Okay.
and leave it to his discretion whether or not he needs to be involved in the next step, which would be probably a review by the three of us of the Eau Claire ordinance proposed changes that we'd like to see. Right?
Right, and then pros and cons, you know, legal opinion around that.
And maybe helpful for information right next discussion.
Probably.
All right, so I'll get
That's
this,
a better place
I'll
to
get
start.
this to you
Yeah, we
by
should-
Monday, a week. So then you can determine if Nathan, you know, I mean, he'll have it. I don't want to unnecessarily use legal
Yeah,
time
I'd like
before we
to
need to.
look, there's some Stevens Point, Oshkosh has got some, just look at a couple, some others, how they address some of these things. And then the chief had also mentioned, do we need to look at possession of cigarettes by minors?
Right.
You know, and smoking,
All right.
what even that issue is within,
Right.
how it is within this.
What is the fine for possession of cigarettes by minor? I'm sorry, I should have.
Yeah, no, no.
I don't have that with me.
All right, we.
But we will keep that in mind.
Yeah, just
So,
there's so much.
did you get those questions from trustee Mara? Yes. You would wanna, yeah, so basically you don't wanna set up kind of an incongruous,
Yeah, we gotta make sure it all blends together,
Right,
other
this-
ordinances.
Isn't going to be a slippery slope thing. We're talking about reducing the fine for possession of 20 kilograms. You know what I'm saying? But I hear you, it was all in this.
with the ordinance, yeah.
One of our many antiquated ordinances that we do. Okay.
And it's 6:21.
Yes, so we'll call this to a close, adjournment, and move on to
Thank you.
community business.
Thank you, Trustee McKay. Okay, so this opens the committee meeting of Community and Business Relations. We have one item on the agenda, and that is a discussion of a possible conversion therapy ban. So, do you want me to open this up, or?
I'm happy to start, if for any other reason, just to introduce Ian Christensen when you're
Okay.
ready.
Okay, well, I'll just give a really, yes, thank you. So we've been working on, we've been discussing for a while at the board level whether or not we're going to take up an ordinance banning conversion therapy, such as Milwaukee has done, Cudahy, Madison, Eau Claire, and other communities. I think we're at that point where we had the board agreement that we can advance this and discuss in committee, and I'm hoping that we'll have something to recommend to full board sooner than later. And so I think we have a variety of people here. Thank you for your hard work and everything for coming, whether or not you support this. So communities in Wisconsin, across the country, and across the globe. I heard there was news that Puerto Rico, is that accurate, has outright banned this practice. This practice that tries to change a person's, I'm reading from here, which I think, change a person's sexual orientation using psychological or other interventions. I think that's kind of actually downplayed. It's, to me, a pretty egregious practice that's employed on, you know, our very vulnerable population, our youth, and as people, as board members here, it's our responsibility to protect our population. So, although we have been told that there are no known practices yet in Charlotte, we don't want them to ever exist. Or, when I say we, I'm speaking of myself here. I don't want to put words in anyone else's mouth. So anyway, go ahead.
So one of the items that the North Shore Health Department was gracious enough is we did kind of a review of local ordinances, and then we referenced the health department to be the enforcement agent in this, and/or the police department. So Ian Christensen is our director of the North Shore Health Department. And when we were discussing, you know, if and how this would be enforced, she was kind enough to converse with us on it and also reach out to a national network to seek their input. And so she prepared a list, about a page and a half of some notes, and we wanted to invite her to review that with us today. Sure.
So, thank you for that. So when Rebecca approached me, I reached out to the Network for Public Health Law. I reviewed Cudahy and the city of Milwaukee and the other local ordinances in Wisconsin to understand a bit more about the rules and regulations around this, especially if the health department's going to be charged with enforcement. And one of the concerns I had was the vagueness of those ordinances in terms of, again, rules and regulations. So from Cudahy, the health department is authorized to promulgate any rules and regulations it deems necessary to implement and enforce this provision of the section. I approached my colleague in Cudahy, and she didn't give me a lot of information in terms of what that means and what their process and policy and procedure. So I reached out to the Network for Public Health Law, again, to find out more on the local level, you know, how these are actually being enforced or what are the processes. And then the answer I got back was vague in terms of that there's not a whole lot of experience in this area with following up and enforcing these types of ordinances. So I came with more questions than with answers to this issue, but in terms of the way these are written, especially in Wisconsin, again, there's not a lot of guidance for departments, whomever you choose to be the enforcer of this ban, if this is the way you go in terms of the process. So at the state level, I know you've reviewed these policies, but a lot of these go back to professional services and licensing agencies, so that those are the enforcement entities, which makes some sense, and that's sort of their charge. Whereas, again, from the health department's perspective, that's a little bit different than our charge. We're going to talk later about kind of our programs and services. In terms of the licenses that we regulate, is more around food safety and environmental health issues. So this would be a really new area for us. So we would seek from other communities across the country and the state about how these, again, are addressed, and have some formal policies and procedures so that we're clear on what it is that we are following up with and what our process is for enforcement. So taking a complaint is one action that we're able to do, but then again, addressing legitimate complaints and really adjudicating appropriately is what our concern would be. So that's kind of my summary of where I am right now with this process. So I'm happy to answer questions based on the notes or what else I've shared.
Thank you.
What, I mean, as I read through this, it's like, you pass the ordinance, but where does it go from there? You don't regulate the profession.
Right, and that's the concern that I have in terms of, again, the way, especially Cudahy and the city of Milwaukee's ordinances are listed. Again, it's very vague in terms of what the health department would do or what guidelines that they're under to enforce such a ban. So I don't know the answer.
Have they had complaints? Have they?
No.
No.
So it says here, due to state preemption, the village of Shorewood may not place additional requirements on medical professionals to refund it.
That's from Nathan.
Yeah.
Yeah, his legal opinion was very helpful in the sense of just outlining how, that we could take action on this, but it really wouldn't have any teeth, and then I would hate to put any department in an enforcement capacity where there really wasn't a process. Because it just leaves it open to too much discretion and.
Right, and if that process comes out separate than ordinance, we're willing to engage in that, but then we'd work with the village to really create what types of systems rather than just being out on our own for
Right.
that.
Right.
So what I think I'm hearing here is that, and I'm not saying I'm agreeing with what I think I'm hearing, is that you would want the enforcement process to be figured out before,
Taking action on proposing an ordinance.
is that what?
we pass a resolution already?
That's a resolution,
So that's a statement of position, but then
Right.
when you actually get to like,
okay, well, Milwaukee, Cudahy, several other municipalities.
Eau Claire and then.
In Wisconsin,
Right.
and nationally, there are a slew, and I think even states, aren't there entire
Yeah.
states, 15,
Yes.
including New York and others.
Right.
I'm not worried that we're on the
No,
frontier
I'm just-
here. Like,
No.
no, I want something that gets something done.
I get it, and
Yeah.
sometimes you have to start somewhere.
Right, at the state level, that is where licensing occurs and, all, so that would mean something. But I understand that if municipality by municipality, we all adopt bans, then perhaps it would become statewide more easily. So I guess that's, I just don't want to put anybody in a position in the meantime that, again, and I go back to the potential victim of this, like, number one, I don't know if an ordinance is like a protective measure that would be as meaningful as like a campaign around the dangers of conversion therapy or possible, but then you get into, I don't know, if, as far as public health, it's like a preventative measure around education. And it seems like I would want to reach potential victims, via those channels. And an ordinance wouldn't do that. And I understand that that's very similar, but every time I think about somebody being hurt by another person, I just want to get the information out so that they're not hurt while we figure out this ordinance, because they won't know whether it exists.
So, and I understand that, and you're looking at this from a policy and a very procedural, and very rightfully so. I do, on the one area that I disagree on what you're saying, and I think you can do this concurrently, is that the people that could get hurt by this are the minors, and not us enacting an ordinance, but by the practice. So if a municipality has on its books, words saying that this practice is not legal,
Right.
like, that's protecting those vulnerable
Well, it's
populations.
validating. We don't have teeth to,
No, but
but it
it's,
is a sense of justice.
then it's incumbent upon the people that want to break our ordinance to justify what they're doing instead of us. Then,
Right.
it's preempt or preventative more so, and and then hopefully we will be able to. Hopefully that with Ever's administration, we will have a lot more teeth eventually. But that's we still have the legislature that we have, so we have to do what we can at the local level. It's my opinion at least, to again protect our residents and others. So I understand that it's not a clear one, right? Because we don't have the enforcement ability. But we won't have anything if we don't do anything. That enforcement ability isn't just going to be dropped on our lap. The more municipalities that do bring about these types of ordinances, we're stronger together. So I understand that it does, seem like, does it put us at risk? Maybe that's one of the things that you might be worried as far as a municipality by having this. I don't know. I know we want to protect, of course, the fiduciaries, right?
Right, I think the legal opinion states that there have been challenges. However, we wouldn't be able to bring a case forward, so somebody would be challenging our fine of, $125 or something. And then those are being upheld at the circuit level. We have a circuit judge, no, potentially, sorry, political. But yeah, that would,
Sure.
the village would have to take that on. And actually, I don't know if somebody could file suit against the health officer.
Certainly, the way that that works in our agreement is that if it is specific to the local community, so the village of Shorewood, then the costs are incurred by the village versus our absorbing those costs. So they can sue me, but I'm acting on behalf of the village of Shorewood in this case, so there's your financial.
All right, so
question of how that would actually work. I'm not saying that it would hurt, I'm not,
Right.
would happen, and I'm not saying that that's a reason to not
Sure, no, and
take
I
action.
appreciate
But
it.
I think we have to ask all these questions.
Yeah, and I'm glad you are asking these questions, these are, you know.
And it says it in our legal opinion too, that
Right.
cases have been challenged and they go up a little bit.
They, right, they have, and
Yeah.
also there are other organizations, ACLU, other, a variety of legal options and people that, I'm not saying, I can't guarantee that they would step in, but, so I completely appreciate the questions that you have.
I actually was under, we got some emails from somebody that said the ACLU is actually against the bans because of the free speech part, no?
Incorrect.
What that?
Incorrect.
Okay, great.
So, anyway, we don't have that much more time here, so I'm gonna keep us on track. So I am comfortable with proceeding with an ordinance similar to the other municipalities, you know, that are listed here. And Cudahy, I mean, let's see, you guys, that don't generally come out with more progressive stuff than Shorewood, Madison, or Eau Claire. So that I'm happy to see them there. I'm surprised that there aren't more municipalities on this list, including, who is near Appleton. Maybe they're waiting on us.
It's there are a couple, the Madison and Eau Claire ordinances do not address enforcement. So what does that do for a municipality if they pass an ordinance without addressing enforcement? I guess that would be more of a legal question for Attorney Fair. So I would, like, is there a way that we can draft the ordinance that doesn't put one department who does not have enforcement capability in that position in the first place? So I guess I would be interested in, I should just read these more closely, because that was the first time that jumped out at me.
So can we have the other one? I'd be curious to see
Right.
how they define conversion therapy. If there's some consistent definition, how they vary, what the different structure.
Cudahy and Milwaukee's is the same.
Okay.
And they're hyperlinked in our packet here.
Okay.
When I do the grid for the possession of marijuana, I can also do it for this, if that would be helpful for you guys.
Oh, I see, okay, so, I mean, Cudahy and Milwaukee both address enforcement.
Right, and it's under rules and regulations.
And of the Department of Health. So,
Right.
okay.
So if you guys have more questions, otherwise I would like to.
Oh, yeah, I want to hear what people have to say. I guess my only question is like, say we said, yeah, we're doing it, where would you go from here? You would just figure something out? Start working with it?
Well, I go to my colleagues across the state
Okay.
to find out if they have any policies and procedures at the department level. for
Okay.
it. I know Cudahy does not, so
Okay.
then I go to Milwaukee and then Claire Madison. But I don't think that the health department is the agency, it's
Right.
the enforcement agency, and then really work out something with Rebecca and Nathan. No.
Right, so maybe we have other options.
No, in fact, some of the others across the country have the municipality as the
Right.
enforcement agency.
Right, to me that makes the most sense.
Right, that's what I assumed it would be.
Yeah.
So let's, yeah, I would like to open it up because we have limited time, but it seems like, and we should let Ms. Christensen know if she needs to come back next time, but we may be looking for a way to take the health department out of the hot seat, so.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I would advise, not because I
Yeah, not
support or don't
exactly.
support the ban, it's just in terms of the agency responding, it
Mhm.
feels like.
Well, I'm also a North Shore Health Department, so we are one of 7 municipalities, and I'm not sure if others would like us to use your resources as such, and that's what we really need to consider also. So I would recommend that we remove the enforcement aspect from the health department. I will bring the grid with the comparison of the ordinances. They are very similar, but, I mean, and they're all pretty new.
I'll look at the enforcement.
So-
and just-
If I had to pick one on that, which I never would do, but, you know, I wish you'd see it Claire.
Okay,
So, yeah, thank you. So if anyone would like to speak, please come up and state your name, if you're a resident, your address, and if you don't have to be a resident to speak.
All right.
But, try to keep it limited, we don't have very much more time on the agenda, and I'm sorry, we're trying to pack in a lot tonight.
Well, good evening, everyone, and thank you for considering this. Thank you for the resolution previously, and thank you for considering this now. My name's Tony Snell, and I serve on the Milwaukee LGBT Center Board, and we have a constituency here in Shorewood as well, and I was the interim executive director who helped spearhead it through Milwaukee, in the city of Milwaukee at the time, and I serve on the Equal Rights Commission there. So I'm kind of intimate in the mechanics of it, and I understand your questions because they're very thoughtful, and we have to consider how you would enforce it as a village, because this is your village, and you're the trustees, and you make that decision. In the city of Milwaukee, there's a fine. It's $500 up to $1,000, and it can be a daily fine. So I have a prepared statement which I will leave here, but I'm just going to share a few thoughts to keep it limited. I think when you're talking about those fines, it sets a tone. It says we will not allow this. It sends a message clear to young people who are considering as much as suicide and harm to themselves, that Shorewood will not stand for this. It puts teeth in it, and teeth are important. Messaging is important, and we're trying to save lives ultimately, and that's what it's doing for our young people. Because too often they sit back, and I've talked to people that have wondered and said, I said, well, I'm coming down to Shorewood. We're gonna talk about this in Shorewood and they're like, I can't believe Shorewood wasn't first. So I mean seriously, so Shorewood has this great reputation, and Milwaukee was first this time. But Shorewood has this positive thinking. It inflicts serious harm on our youth, and also you've got to understand the fraud aspect of it. So, for example, there might not be an entity here. They're in Brookfield, by the way. They could come here and practice at somebody's house and cross your municipal border, and they are defrauding people here because this practice is nothing but fraud. So, in that case, I hope you'll consider it there as well. So. Thank you again for the opportunity to be here, and we look forward to continuing our strong partnership with you in Shorewood, and if there's anything we can do, we'll be here.
Well, I appreciate that, Mrs. Snell. So, considering you just were directly involved with Milwaukee,
right?
Then you're saying, am I hearing you correctly, that you need a resource in assisting us with the development of this, should we need it?
Gladly, and I'm sure our Legislative Research Bureau or LRB, they'll be happy. I could work with them and helping put this together. Also, the Human Rights Campaign has a legal department, which helped us. And Xavier, I'm trying to remember his last name, Passad, would be helpful in this situation. And the Trevor Project, which is a LGBT youth program that's nationwide. And they have the legal capacity as well. So,
and I appreciate that. And one thing that's different from us than Milwaukee and
sure.
other is that we're basically volunteers. We don't have staff that report to us directly. So,
well, these two entities will be glad to work with you directly, and they'll provide whatever you need. And then you can pick and choose, and that's what happened in Milwaukee. We took the HRC language and then changed it a bit and tweaked it to fit Milwaukee.
Sure.
So, yeah, gladly I will share that with you, and happy to do it.
I'm glad you brought up the fraud piece, because that's what I was wondering. I remember Trustee Meyer and I had a brief conversation about, have they had success prosecuting practitioners under fraud law? And the only reason why it wouldn't mean that I wouldn't take action, because it's already taken care of there, but it would make me feel better because, as we said, municipal ordinance doesn't have that much teeth, but fraud, statutes around committing fraud do. And so.
I can't speak to that.
You can or you cannot?
I cannot speak to that. I don't know if others can speak to that in particular in the fraud side, but we can find the resources.
And it may not, it would just make me feel better that we weren't. I never want to do anything that's misleading by taking action. So I like, obviously, yes, a ban makes a statement. It validates, it deters, for sure. But if it does happen, I want there to be some type of, process involved. And so knowing, and that's how I categorize it. It's a fraudulent practice.
Right. And happy to connect you with individuals who would probably answer the question. And I would also encourage you to consider something with the, like we did the Equal Rights Commission, we have specific protections for gender identity and expression that we've incorporated just a couple of years ago with actual penalties for discrimination in employment, public accommodation, and housing. So just,
Oh, we did.
I just want, yeah, at the city
Oh,
level,
okay, great.
which are not protected by the state.
Correct.
Right.
So I would encourage you, and I'd be happy to send you information there as well.
And that's something
That'd be
we
great.
discussed because we do have a resolution, but we were looking at taking that to the ordinance as well. So there are many members here, so I appreciate that.
Thank you all. Thank you all for your time. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Second.
I am the Reverend Tori Topton. I am the senior pastor with Metropolitan Community Churches in Milwaukee, but I'm also the coordinator of the Queer and Allied Faith Leaders of the Southern Wisconsin area. Being a victim of conversion therapy at a young age, I can strongly say that it is something that does not work, does not affect, I think, individuals who are under that auspice of going through that. I think it only impedes and it makes more damage to that individual moving forward. Sadly, to say that all of these ordinances that are out there don't affect the faith communities in some ways, because a faith community still can go forward with it unless that faith community falls under that support of banning conversion therapy. I know many of my constituents and colleagues in the southern Wisconsin area are in favor of the ban of conversion therapy, but again, it's just something to keep in the back of your heads that while you have an ordinance, there's nothing that doesn't say that somebody can take their child or take somebody through a different source of that. Again, being someone who was a person who went through that, it provides damaging essences for any child, whether they're under 18 or even as an adult. So to look at all the aspects of these ordinances and fines, I think it's something that we do need to have on a statewide level, while at the same time looking at how locally in each of our villages or municipalities that we support and make sure that we don't have those situations happen to any individual.
And so so if we adopted an ordinance here, any faith community within our municipality could still host that type of therapy or service or whatever they would call it. They could be the host and then...
They could still provide, I guess you want to say, the service, or still deal with conversion type methods
Right.
or whatever. I think I can strongly say that more and more faith traditions, depending on the faith tradition, ban that don't support conversion therapy, and especially as the rights for the LGBTQ plus communities have gotten more stringent and more stronger in the support of our individuals in these communities. I think more and more faith leaders look at it as, we're all children of God, and we all look at the perspective that we're all equal. So I'm going to say some of the right-wing faith traditions, still could do it, but I don't know if they would try to practice that. It's a crapshoot, basically.
Especially in a community that had a